Dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're actually taking a completely different path. Instead of unpacking a dense research paper or breaking down complex data sets, we are going to explore something incredibly intimate, raw, and honestly just fascinating. We are stepping right inside the handwritten pages of a personal journal. It's this deeply human journey that starts with the simple, everyday act of learning words, and then unexpectedly blossoms into the shaping of entire, profound worldviews. So get ready, because the progression of thought we're going to see here is really something special.
Just notice the raw, handwritten aesthetic of this notebook. The blue ink pressed onto the grid paper, that slightly hurried cursive, even the minor smudges, it immediately immerses us in the author's everyday thoughts, doesn't it? What we're looking at here is a captivating glimpse into a bilingual mind. This is someone actively navigating the space between English and Vietnamese. It feels so authentic. You can almost literally hear the scratch of the pen and feel the mental gears turning as the author works to capture their thoughts and translate their inner voice right onto the physical page.
And right near the top of the page, sandwiched between everyday phrases, we find this incredibly striking quote, "I languish for love." Below it, we see the Vietnamese translation, "Hail hot feet you." I really want to highlight the dramatic, almost poetic tone of this specific English phrase. Languish is definitely not a word you use when you're casually learning a new language to order coffee or ask for directions, right? It sets the stage for the deep emotions contained within these pages. It tells us immediately that this journal belongs to a reflective, deeply feeling individual who is searching for the exact, nuanced words to express matters of the heart.
Section 1. The Art of Words, a Bilingual Journey.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that before we get into the heavy philosophies, we have to start right where the author starts. Let's explore this granular, deeply relatable act of jotting down vocabulary and phrases. Anyone who has ever tried to master a second language, or even just improve their own, knows this habit incredibly well. It's the meticulous practice of gathering the tools necessary to articulate exactly who you are. Notice the specific juxtaposition of the text here. On the left, the author is practicing English phrases like temperate in your language and tattling, spelled with one T. On the right, we have the corresponding Vietnamese equivalents, Xin hai un noi zu xin hun and ba hua. This beautifully captures that universal human habit of collecting expressive words. These aren't just basic beginner terms. Words like temperate and tattling deal with behavior, restraint, and gossip. The author is literally equipping themselves with the vocabulary to analyze human interaction and social dynamics.
But a journal isn't just about structured text, is it? Nestled right in the middle of these strict textual translations is this unexpected visual element, a gothic, vintage sticker of a girl with pigtails holding a sword. It adds such a wonderful layer of personality and artistic contrast to the page. It breaks up the grid and the ink, reminding us that the person writing these notes has a distinct aesthetic and a real creative flair. It grounds the intellectual exercise of translation squarely in the visual, personal expression of a young adult's diary.
Okay, moving on to Section 2. Ignorance as a Tyrant. Deconstructing Power.
If you thought this journal was just going to be about vocabulary and cool stickers, prepare for an abrupt shift. We transition from everyday vocabulary practice directly into a heavy, philosophical deconstruction of human governance and power structures. Let's impartially map out the political worldview the author constructs next. They define ignorance not just as a lack of knowledge, but literally as a tyrant. They go on to state that this tyrant of ignorance gave birth to monarchy, which they define as a system of power built entirely on falsehoods and what is wrong. So the crucial point is how they frame ignorance as the absolute root of flawed governance. We're seeing a mind wrestling with grand concepts of power, right and wrong, and the structures that govern humanity, all triggered within the margins of a personal notebook.
Section 3. The Mirror of Knowledge, a Vision for Truth.
The author doesn't just leave us with a bleak view of tyranny, though. They immediately present a solution. Having diagnosed the problem with the world as they see it, the author shifts their focus to a passionate elevation of truth and knowledge. If ignorance builds oppressive structures, what builds just ones? And this brilliantly illustrates their logical progression step by step. Step 1. Ignorance acts as a tyrant. Step 2. It gives birth to monarchy, rooted in falsehood. Then, the pivot. At step 3, knowledge, on the other hand, is a power built on what is right and what is true, which leads to their ultimate conclusion in step 4. Only knowledge deserves to control. It's a striking assertion that true authority shouldn't be inherited or taken by force, but must be derived purely from truth and an informed mind.
To cap off this grand philosophy, the author writes one final, powerful sentence on the page. Conscious is the mirror of innate knowledge in each of us. Wow, this is profound. They're connecting their grand, sweeping philosophy of societal truth right back to the individual's inner moral compass. They're suggesting that we don't have to look outward for this knowledge that deserves to rule. It's innate. It lives inside us, and our conscience is the mirror that reflects that deep, inherent truth. It's a deeply empowering thought to end a journal entry on, for sure.
Section 4. A vision for connection. Everyday empathy.
Let's move to and see how this builds into something even more personal. For our final section today, we're going to look at another entry from this author. We're transitioning away from these grand societal philosophies to something highly intimate and deeply empathetic. We are leaving the indoor, slightly cramped grid paper behind and stepping into an expansive, serene outdoor setting, a peaceful pastoral scene under a bright blue sky. A woman stands calmly near a fence, looking at a magnificent longhorn cow. It's a massive visual shift that acts as a real breath of fresh air. It grounds the heavy, abstract philosophies we just discussed in the tangible, beautiful reality of the physical world.
Overlaid on this image is a beautiful quote written by the author. It translates to, "I want to become a person who makes anyone destined to meet me feel wonderful for having known such a person." I actually want to slow the pacing down here just to let that resonate. This is a deeply empathetic desire. It highlights the universal human yearning for positive connection and a meaningful legacy. Beyond fighting tyranny or possessing ultimate knowledge, the author's deepest aspiration is simply to be a source of warmth and goodness to everyone they cross paths with.
But there is a final, vital piece of context at the very bottom of the image. A brief sign-off that reads, "If tomorrow never comes." This single phrase completely recontextualizes the quote above it. It emphasizes how the author grounds their grand ideas and their hopes for connection in the fleeting, fragile nature of life. It creates an immediate sense of urgency. You can't wait until you have perfect knowledge or until society is fixed to be kind. You have to make people feel wonderful today, because tomorrow is absolutely never guaranteed.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer. We've gone from practicing the word tattling to dismantling monarchies to striving for ultimate empathy, all through the lens of a personal journal. The concepts we've walked through show a brilliant, continuously evolving mind. So I want to leave you with a provocative thought directly inspired by this author's reflections. If tomorrow never comes, how do you want to be remembered by the people you meet today? Take that question with you. Thank you so much for engaging with this material,